which is our UK registered charity and fundraising arm. Our UK office is headed up by Sania Sufi, who's our CEO, and we'll leave her contact information at the end of the video. So if you want to get in touch with us, please do. Our UK office, primarily, we raise funds from generous donors throughout the UK to build and support TCF schools, which are located and operated in Pakistan. And one of the benefits of donating in the UK to our UK office is that if you're a UK taxpayer, we can also claim gift aid on your donations. So that adds an additional 25% boost at no extra cost to you. We also have registered fundraising offices across the world, in the US, in Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Italy, Norway, Switzerland, and the UAE. So if you have family, friends there who would love to get involved with us and attend our events, then please do ask them to look us up. So I'm shortly gonna ask Akhter Abbas, our Executive Vice President of TCF from Pakistan, to speak about TCF and tell you more about our education model. But before that, I'd just like to pass it over to Dr. Zafar and Hifsa Iqbal to welcome you all.
Assalamu alaikum. Very good morning to you all. Very good morning to our friends, family, and TCF supporters to our house. And we have some super speakers today, and I'm hoping you'll walk away from this morning with a wow feeling. You know, what an amazing event. So really excited about this. I just want to say a few words about how I became interested in TCF. I heard that one of the things that they did was to run schools in slums. Did you know that there are 1 billion people on the planet who live in slums? That's 1 in 8 of us. Just kind of let that sink in. And one of the most powerful ways of tackling intergenerational poverty is actually educating girls, because when they become moms themselves, they're going to try extra hard to ensure their kids actually attend school. I came across this extraordinary organization which operates in slums as well as other areas. It provides education to children with poor families and has really excellent educational outcomes. And they are absolutely massive as well. They're really big. In fact, they're the largest provider of education in Pakistan. They're the largest NGO besides the government, obviously. They're such an amazing success story, and I thought they well deserve a coffee morning. I've got my coffee, and I haven't got a cake, but I've got some croissants here today. And me and Hifsa are passionate about TCF, and we'll be talking about a recent visit we did to Pakistan. I went on a work trip, and I took the opportunity to go and visit a TCF school as well. So I'm going to pass you. So that's me done. And please feel free to use the chat box. We'd like to hear your comments. We'd like to hear what you're thinking. We'd like to hear how maybe you could be you could take part, etc. So I'd love to hear your views. But I'll pass you on to Zia today. We've got some, like I said, some amazing speakers today, and we're very honoured to also have Sidra Iqbal, who's the TCF ambassador. Over to you, Zia.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Just a quick wave if you guys can hear me, the video guys at least, the ones on the video. Brilliant. Good morning to all of you. It's afternoon here in Pakistan, and we're in Karachi in the middle of what Karachiites call a storm. Which for all of you is just a nice, bright, slightly rainy day. But it's a wonder of this crisis that sitting on opposite opposite ends of the world, we can still be part of an intimate event where we talk almost amongst family and friends about something we all care deeply about. It's lovely to hear your story, Dr. Saab, about how you got introduced to TCF. I used to be a banker 6 years ago, and I used to donate and volunteer for this organization until one day I thought that this requires more of my life. And just a quick introduction. So what I do is I work full time now in the head office, and I head global resource mobilization, and I also head the part of the organization which oversees government schools that we have adopted. We have about 350 of them, and I'll talk very briefly about them. So without much further ado, I want to just quickly get to TCF itself. What is it? Why do we care so deeply about it? And what is the problem that it's trying to solve? So give me a second while I share my slides with you. Really, I think the key thing to remember is that Pakistan is in the middle of many different, it's facing a lot of different problems. But for those of us who have benefited from education in our life, where that one agent, that one input has really transformed the direction our lives took, for us, education was and always has been the silver bullet to help Pakistanis take on a lot of the different challenges that they face. And the sobering thought that one starts this entire narrative with is the fact that 22.6 million children are currently out of school in Pakistan. These are kids of school-going age. There are almost 45% of the kids of school-going age in Pakistan. Is the second largest population of kids out of school in the world. And the thing to pause at really and to encounter and really absorb is that this child has done nothing wrong except that they have suffered from this accident of birth. They have they've lost this lottery, which causes some of us to be born in households which allow us to get the best that this world's knowledge and educational systems have to offer. And these children don't, through no fault of their own. And that to all of us has to be at some level unacceptable. There is enough in this world to do right by these children. And that's a promise that we at TCF want to do our best to keep. The issue is not just number of children out of school. Many of the children who are in school are not learning well. About half the children in school in Pakistan cannot read or do basic arithmetic at grade level as well. So that's a big part of the learning crisis, which many developing countries are facing, but Pakistan is really facing the acute crisis as far as this is concerned. And so 25 years ago, today it really is, this was supposed to be the 25th year celebration for TCF. It's just not the year when we celebrate anything. But 25 years ago, these few friends that I'm showing on the screen, these 6 founders, 5 of whom I'm showing on the screen today, they started meeting every week and started thinking about what to do about Pakistan's myriad problems. And they settled on education. And the atypical thing that they did was they started to do something about it. They built 5 schools. And the first year they enrolled 700 children in those 5 schools in the slums around Karachi. Fast forward 25 years, and we now have 1,652 school units that we manage all over Pakistan. The Economist calls us perhaps the largest network of independent schools in the world. And all of these schools look pretty much like the school that I'm showing you on the screen. They're purpose-built, and they're not poor school for poor children. In these schools today, there are 266,000 children from low-income families in some of the most vulnerable communities currently receiving quality education. And this experiment really in what citizenship can do, and it's actually an act. It's a project to create citizenship at a much bigger level. This has seen a quarter of a century and some really remarkable results. We have a countrywide network of schools. We are not just centered in Sindh or in Karachi. And as you can see, we're follow the pattern of population around the country. Like I said, purpose-built schools. These are some of the schools that we built after the earthquake in the north of Pakistan. But wherever we go, we look at local materials that will give us the best cost, as well as that come from the land where we are building. And the reason why we built these purpose-built schools is because the child who comes into these schools must not feel that he or she is coming to a charity school, that he or she is coming to something where we must make do, that he or she must feel that they deserve the best that education has to offer, and their light, temperature, air, space, these things make a lot of difference in the education process as well. Very early on, the founders decided that one of the design constraints for this enterprise will be that half of the students in TCF schools must be girls. How do you do that in a country which has its own challenges vis-a-vis girls' education, with respect to female empowerment as a whole? And when we put our mind to it, we found that there were ways. So one of the key ingredients here was to ensure that all the teachers, the principals and all the teachers in TCF schools will be women. So one big concern or fear that a parent has about sending a girl child to school should not be an issue in their minds if they're sending those girls to our schools. With these 12,500 female teachers and principals and another few thousand non-faculty members, we are the largest employer of women in the private sector in Pakistan today. And this, if you want to think of TCF as anything, one remarkable characteristic is that it is people like me are an absolute minority. You can walk the halls in the head office or walk into any school around the country and you'll find this is an organization run by women and driven by their commitment to education. We did not want, just like the buildings, we did not want to just make do as far as education is concerned. So whether it's school leadership, whether it's the medium of instruction, whether it's the books, which we develop ourselves for our schools, and they are based on the best curricula and syllabi all over the world. Whether it is the teachers who we painstakingly take through about 120 hours of training every year in classroom, and an additional framework of digital learning throughout the year. So intensive teacher training goes on every year, and a very detailed and elaborate set of assessments that is done independently of our school system on our kids throughout their journey through school. So through all of these levers, we truly aim to deliver some of the best quality learning in Pakistan today. The result, 58% of the children who graduate from TCF graduate with an A or A+ grade in their matriculation exam. So the national average would be somewhere in the mid-20s. And just to juxtapose with this fact, you have to remember that these learners are first-generation learners in their families. They don't have anyone in their families to help them with their homework or their studies. Many of them work outside of school. Their time is not available to them to study outside of school either. So with those odds, for some of them to go through to such fantastic outcomes is truly a reflection of how much they want this path and how much their families are willing to invest in it as well. As an institution, we've always believed in professional management. I, as a manager of a big part of the organization, and many of my colleagues, we enjoy a degree of management autonomy, which many nonprofits find a struggle to provide their managers. The board truly is a governance entity, and the management runs the organization. Many of us have come from oil marketing companies and global multinationals and banks, etc. Having forsaken those journeys for this much more rewarding one. And throughout the various cadres of the organization, you'd find students and alumni of the best institutions in the world. You'd have folks who came here, worked in a school, worked in an area as an area manager, went to Harvard, did a degree in education management, came back to work, not just in the head office, but in the field. And so we walk through the organization and you find a depth of talent that I, as a colleague, am always humbled by, and find I'm always challenged by that internally as well. lots of things happening around the core academic model as well. We have a massive mentoring system, which is designed, which is called Rehbar. It's run by volunteers and driven by volunteers. And it is meant to take this child and his or her mind out of the community that they live in, to show them what the possibilities of their journey are, and to really propel them to aspire for bigger things in their lives than just what they have seen with the role models they have in their communities, and not just in a life sense, but in hard nuts and bolts sense as well. We do deep career counseling with all of these boys and girls throughout their senior years in our system. We also have, beyond the academic model as well, some massive programs that we do for the community. So one of the flagship sort of community development programs is Agahi. It's an adult literacy program, which was awarded a few years ago by UNESCO as a best in sort of a class of how they use, in terms of how they use technology. And every year we take about 20,000 or more women through from absolute illiteracy to functional literacy, where they can read a newspaper, write a letter, and do basic math. And so far, this program has taken 120,000 women across to functional literacy. This is life-changing for them, as you can imagine, and we want to really scale this further. We also run about 19 water plants, clean drinking water plants in our campuses, but really meant for the communities. And every day, about 20,000 beneficiaries, get their clean drinking water from these plants. As I had mentioned earlier, one of the big programs over the last few years has been to go beyond our own schools and actually partner with the government. So today we have about 350 plus schools around the country, where we have partnered with the government to run those schools. And we have seen remarkable results of this intervention. Enrollment has tripled between the time when we took over and a few years hence. And the learning outcomes in terms of literacy and numeracy have also doubled or tripled in the same time period. So it's just dramatic what good, solid management can do to the same schools which were failing a few years ago. We have just started a college in Karachi as an experiment, where 400 of our brightest boys and girls, increasingly girls, come and they're selected from all our schools in Karachi, and they go through a very intense program around academics, personality development, and preparing them for the top universities in Pakistan. I won't go to this in much detail. These are some of the prizes that we've won along the way and the awards that have recognized TCF's work. But let's talk about the biggest award and the biggest recognition we have so far, and that's really our alumni. These children who came, holding their parents' fingers, a decade ago, and today they're passing out as young men and women into the world. We do a lot to support them in this journey, even after they leave TCF's doors. And now they've made it their way to some of the biggest and best institutions in the world and in Pakistan. So what are the statistics around here? About 41,000 plus graduates so far. As you can imagine, in the early years, we were only operating in primary schools. So these are really an expanding population every year. This number expands dramatically every year. But how have they done after they left? So about 90% of them, after they matriculate from grade 10 at TCF, they go on to college. About 90% of them go on to college. And within those, about 45% go on to tertiary education. For all the graduates who are now above 22 years of age, 71% of them are working. An additional 15% are still studying. So about 86% of those who are above 22 years of age, boys and girls, are either working and they're standing on their own 2 feet, or they're still investing in themselves. And their average income today is about 31,000 rupees, whereas the average household income that they came in with for their entire family was about 20,000 rupees. So just one TCF graduate coming through this journey and joining the workforce completely transforms not only the mental makeup of this family, but the physical and financial circumstances that they find themselves in. And this truly is the biggest sort of proof point for not just the model, but the effort and commitment that all the thousands of volunteers put into this, this machine every year. I just want to share with you news that I found out a few days ago. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Pakistan, there are two big business schools in Pakistan amongst many other good ones, but LUMS is one of them in Lahore. And since we've been in Karachi, LUMS has always been a distant kind of a destination for some of our students. But a few days ago, LUMS announced its results for the admission process, and 4 of our children made their way into LUMS, their bachelor's program a few days ago. I've just put up pictures of 2 of them. Abdul Wahid on the right is joined the BSc Physics program at LUMS. His father is a farmer. His mother, of course, takes care of the house and works equally hard. And that's the circumstances where this young man has come from and made it into one of the best universities in Pakistan. I keep saying this about LUMS because I'm from LUMS as well, but so I'm a little partial. But I want to share with you the story of Aisha as well. Aisha Siddiqui, she's joined the BSc Honours program on the business school side. When we asked her what her father's occupation was, she said, "जी वो गधा गाड़ी चलाते हैं, बजरी इधर से उधर लेके जाते हैं," which means in English that he drives a donkey cart, and his job is to move sand and building material from one place to another. And this is all she could do to describe what her father does. So the delta, the difference, the transformation that one generation of education makes is from the absolute abject poverty of the bottom of the pyramid to the best educational institutions in Pakistan. I've been in this organization for 6 years, and I am always moved by the fact that that these lives which have been transformed represent so many other lives whose faces and names we don't know, but they will have a real impact in their brothers and sisters and parents' life in the years to come. So I've been asked also, beyond sharing with you TCF's journey, also sharing with you the most recent chapter of this story, which is what we've been doing in the past few months as we dealt with this crisis. And as you can imagine, Pakistan went through its fair share of stress, especially economic stress, as we locked down, and people who were reliant on daily wages literally had nothing to eat for a while there. And for us as an educational institution, it's very difficult to extract ourselves from our core mission, but we're also neighbors, and we're also members of those communities where we have our schools. And as those community members, our job was to play a role in alleviating this particular wave of suffering. So the 3 things that we chose to do was A, to provide immediate relief to families and households in our community. B, to provide support to frontline healthcare workers in some of the smaller hospitals and more distant clinics in our cities and communities. And third, to continue some form of learning and education and engagement for the millions of children who are now consigned to stay at home. And so the results for the last few months has been that we have managed to provide relief to about 250 communities across Pakistan and touch about 45,000 plus households. We distributed relief worth about 110 million rupees. And all of this was possible through a massive volunteer force comprised of alumni, teachers, and other community members who helped us identify members of those communities who were truly in need and under stress. And this was done within a few months from start to finish. And as you can see, it was done across Pakistan. The second piece, of course, was providing protection to some of our healthcare workers who are fighting this fight on the front line. And we've just finished distribution of about 20,000 PPE kits for some of these places. And really the key thing to remember is some of the biggest hospitals in Karachi or Lahore will have this equipment, but the smaller locations in some of the second tier and third tier cities will not have the same kind of protection afforded to their frontline staff. And this was something we were able to help with. The third piece is obviously close to our hearts. And here we was faced with the real challenge that our child does not have access to digital tools or connectivity. And what do we do while, our children may be, exposed to an ongoing process of online learning? TCF children have no such opportunity. So we partnered with the government of Pakistan and provided content to their to a TV channel which was initiated just during this crisis. And we created a program for the first time in our history. We went into TV and created a program to engage these children who are completely bewildered right now in this crisis as to what the world is coming to. And we reached over the last few months as many as 6 million viewers tuning in every week to this TV program, which involves storytelling and exercise and stuff really to continue learning, but in an engaging way. And then we also launched this magazine / study pack, which targeted our own primary and secondary children, just to again keep engaging them in some form of productive learning, and provide parents who are struggling with how to keep these guys occupied through this crisis with some tools to engage them positively. We also wanted to ensure that we remain connected to them so that they come back to school when schools inshallah reopen soon. And here we've managed to help many other nonprofits and school systems who wanted to do the same thing, and we have been sort of sharing this content with them and even printing it for them in some instances to keep this process going for our children. As you can see, when the magazine reaches the home, kids who would normally would not take up homework and take up school work to be done at home suddenly feel that they have something really engaging to do. And you'd find no matter what the circumstances, they would get right down to it. And parents came back to us with lovely stories of how the kids were certainly more happy than they were before. So here is, just to sum up, here is this organization, ladies and gentlemen, which over the last 25 years has managed to not only become a member of the community, to not only to kind of change in an academic sense the trajectory of some of these lives, but we've yearned and I think in some measure succeeded to change the trajectory of the community's life and the direction that they as a whole would have followed had we not been there. And as we face this next chapter of schools reopening, inshallah, we are concerned about the fact that education seems to be further from people's minds. For the first time this financial year, in many years, we have closed with a deficit rather than a surplus. And we are really looking for that continuing support, which can enable these journeys to continue and for these children to continue thriving. I'll stop there. I hope I haven't taken too much time. Thank you, Zainab.
Thank you so much, Zia, for that wonderful, insightful presentation. And thank you all of you who've been typing in your questions in the chat box. We will get to that just after our next segment. So we're really excited also to be joined by our TCF Goodwill Ambassador, Sidra Iqbal, who's also joining us from Pakistan. Sidra is a noted broadcast journalist, media communication expert, and policy influencer. She's always used her voice to highlight real issues in Pakistan and champion important causes. And she's also the host of a daily news morning show called Aaj Pakistan with Sidra Iqbal on Aaj News. So Sidra, thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear about why this mission to educate underprivileged children in Pakistan is important to you and why you came on board with TCF as a Goodwill ambassador.
Thank you so much, Zainab, for having me here. And first and foremost, thank you very much, Hifsa and Dr. Zafar, for having us all and making this an occasion where we can all connect. It's truly a privilege and a delight to be here. And I was mesmerized with Zia's very comprehensive presentation, because each time it comes up, it just tells you the reason why we feel so passionately about this initiative. First and foremost, I hope that your coffee and your tea is overflowing, because you only give from a cup which is overflowing. And it kind of takes me back to 3 years when I was participating in a Commonwealth of the Foreign Office and Commonwealth Initiative in UK. And it was a delegation from all over the world, but there was a subsection from South Asia. And after the program, the organizers asked us whether if there are any tips or if there's any feedback we'd like to offer for improvement in the program. And you would not believe the only feedback we had unanimously as South Asians was that the milk that you serve with the tea is cold. What we'd like is a warmer or a lukewarm or a hotter addition to our tea. So I hope that that's not the case, because everybody must be having the right kind of tea and coffee to be a part of this conversation. Well, first and foremost, I feel TCF and I kind of go back to my own school days. I mean, I remember, going to my favorite eating place and seeing this white tin can offering and actually exciting us in realizing how important education is and how privileged we are in a country like Pakistan to have that access. And it would always urge us to think compassionately about the community and about the people who can't really afford it. So I felt, a connection with them ever since. I mean, the green leaf to me was always the leaf of hope, of brotherhood, of prosperity, of opportunities that are yet to be realized, people that you have yet to meet. And throughout this journey, even as a broadcast journalist, there have been several occasions where I've participated in TCF initiatives, their fundraisers, or the Ubharte Sitare program, the Rehbar program that was mentioned by Zia. And one of the things that really struck me, Zainab, is every time I was in touch with the alumni, they spoke with so much passion and so much grit that it brought you back to the real essence of education. Education is just not about having the functionality of literacy, of arithmetic skills that you can lead on in life. It's about having that heart-based connection where you have hope and where you have passion and where you have dreams. I found this distinct thing about the TCF alumni. They'd come from one of the most challenging, some of the most vulnerable communities where, just like Zia was mentioning, they were the first generation going out to be educated. Yet when you saw them, they had the fire in their belly, they had the spark in their eyes, and they'd never be ashamed of where they're coming from. Having that power, I felt, being someone who works closely with young people, I have been to elite schools all over the world. I've worked with young people from all stratas of society in Pakistan, in South Asia, and world over. But I found that to be very unique with TCF, to instill in them the sense of worthiness, which is beyond what you own, beyond where you live, beyond the kind of house you have, beyond the kind of background you have. I think that is truly the purpose of education, and which allows you to dream. I mean, who are we if we don't have the ability to dream? And to be able to instill that really inspired me. I've had the TCF alumni come in and be celebrated when they make it to the best of institutions in Pakistan, just like LUMS was being mentioned, IBA was being mentioned. I know of this young girl who got into Harvard and she was from TCF. And that was for me an aha moment, because somebody with their sheer grit, but it also emphasizes the need and the importance of having institutions like TCF, having that accessibility. Like you and I can talk about a young person's resolve to go away with, to do away with all the things that hold them back. But unless you have somebody hand-holding, unless you have somebody opening that door for them, it just becomes merely rhetoric and merely just a conversation over a cup of coffee. So I think I was very inspired by seeing not just the passion they had for their own dreams, but how conscious they are with their giving and receiving. I mean, there's so many young people from TCF who have the dream that they'd like to go back to TCF and teach more people and be the change in their communities. I mean, from all levels, from dreaming to becoming, a major influencer, to being the community change leader, it was everything. And seeing that over the years really inspired me. The other thing that really, sort of hit me was recently with the pandemic. I think education and learning related issues came center stage. And just like you can imagine, when you have financial difficulties, when there is actual, so much of struggle to make ends meet, unfortunately, in a country like Pakistan, where these kids are already coming from a less privileged and underserved sort of a background, education doesn't remain a priority. And that for me was heartbreaking. I mean, even when you have the will, when you've tasted the sweet nectar of education, of hope and of desire and of dream, suddenly being told that, I'm sorry, your parents can't afford it, or the circumstances have changed, I think that really pulled me in. This is a very recent involvement as a Goodwill ambassador. I've been a friend of TCF for as long as I can remember, but being there in this formal capacity, I would strongly put all my good faith and my presence in urging all of you to help and come be a part of it. Because in the last many years, in the last decades, they've proved their mettle. They've come so far. But in order to sustain and to continue doing good, is when we need to sort of come together. And it's all about engagement. It's about holding hands. It's beyond caste and creed. It doesn't matter if you are watching this and if you're from Pakistan or not. It's about connecting to the hopes and desires of a country that has more than 50% of its population as young people, as children, of having more than 20 million kids who are of school-going age, and right now they're out of school. And that gap, that number, can actually go up further if we don't really intervene right now. So my request, my humble request to everyone who's here right now, I was looking at the questions as well, of how we can make the model more inclusive, how students with special needs can be catered to, if they have any special learning requirements, how and if they have a part over here. I'm sure we can all pitch in, and there's always room for growth. There's always room for expansion. There's always room for learning new things. But right now, what is most needed is sustainability of the program, of making sure that the kids we have in the network continue their journey of education, and they continue being flexible. They continue being proud of where they're coming from, and they continue dreaming, and they continue believing that a better tomorrow is possible. Because you and I haven't even looked at the tip of the iceberg. For you and me, it just comes instinctively. It's a natural thing. Oh my God, a child who's going to be born in our school would probably already be thinking, what's the best preschool to send them in? We ask the child whether he or she wants to be a doctor, whether or not he wants to be an engineer or something else. But for these kids, it's a whole different reality. It's about survival. It's about things on a daily basis. And if that doesn't move you, I think we're misusing our own privilege. We're misusing what we've been blessed with. And we only have this as a miracle of coincidence. I mean, where you and I and we all are in this position, it's sheer good luck. I mean, we haven't really done anything to have it all. But now it's really upon us how we can offer it to other people. How can we lend a hand and bring them to this side and probably get them to go even higher and brighter. So thank you once again, TCF, for giving me this opportunity to be a part of the family, to further this cause and to make my humble contribution in it. And once again, all the people who are here, I would strongly recommend if you visit, and whenever you visit Pakistan, please visit a TCF school. I'd love to come along with you. I'd love for you to meet with the alumni. I'd love for you to see the spark in their eyes. We do regular sessions with them. I recently on Father's Day interviewed a young chap whose father could not, he was a single father and he got laid off and he couldn't afford private education. And there was a time when they were struggling, they were literally starving. There wasn't enough food in the house. And then lo and behold, they found TCF. And, You should see the kind of ambition this young person has. Just talking about him gives me goosebumps. So, I mean, there's so many of such stories, so many of these beautiful stories. And I know that these people are definitely going to make a dent in the universe like they are positioned to be. And thank you, TCF, for doing this. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Hifsa and Zafar Saab, for having us and giving us this opportunity to bring their story to this wonderful audience. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Sidra. I couldn't have said it better. I mean, even on trips that I've made to TCF schools, there's nothing like it. So I would always encourage anyone who's traveling to Pakistan, take a couple hours out of your trip, go and visit one of your nearest schools. You can get in touch with our UK team and we can easily organize that. Just as Zafar and Hifsa requested when they went earlier this year. So we're going to take some questions now. We've got lots of questions that have been coming through the chat box. One of the first few was about schools in sort of more difficult areas to manage, like KPK and Balochistan. So whether how TCF schools are developing in those regions. Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, I think naturally, that's a great question. I think naturally, any network kind of in a country like Pakistan with 220 plus million people, it has opportunities to make an impact in many different places. And then the second question is really, where do you have the capability to make a real impact? And where is the same need most unmet? So there are parts of northern Pakistan where we felt that where we had gone, and immediately after the earthquake, we had done a lot of work in terms of relief as well as built new schools. But we also found that there were good work being done by other very credible organizations in Gilgit-Baltistan and in Kashmir as well. So we have largely concentrated our efforts. For instance, you see Balochistan has 84 school units, and across, whether it's Gwadar, whether it's Quetta, whether it's the border next to Sindh, you would see TCF schools in some of the most difficult to reach places. To anecdotally explain how difficult it is, a principal or a teacher in a TCF van travels 2 to 3 hours sometimes to get to school one way and 2 to 3 hours on her way back. I once asked a teacher like this, why do you do this? Like, this is a commute from hell. And those are not great roads either. That's half of your day gone just traveling. And she said, I've been doing this for a while, and I was thinking of leaving in the first few months, but now these are my children, so I can't leave. I'm stuck. And that kind of passion is what it takes to run a school in a place in the middle of some of these areas. So as a strategy, we are only constrained by our ability to run a quality school and the need in the area. And sometimes it's not the need which is lacking, but our ability to administratively reach some of these areas. But we are trying every year to expand into even tougher areas.
Thank you. I had a quick question for Sidra. Sidra, you've been, as a journalist, you interview heads of state of Pakistan. You've covered the, elections. So what has your experience been on, education as a, an agenda item for these people that you interview who are in positions of power to really change things? Have you felt encouraged? There's, a good movement happening?
Zainab, I feel it's definitely on the agenda, and a number of development agencies, as well as subsequent governments, provincial governments, since, after the 18th Amendment and the provincial autonomy, education has become a more provincial matter when it comes to state-run schools. What I feel is since it has grown so organically, so sporadically, there was definitely opportunity. The state was unable to provide for all the children in the country, so the private sector stepped in, and then the private sector had further, further divisions in it. So there's several systems which are running in the country right now, and they all have very different, pedagogy styles. They're the madrasas as well. Even the far-flung areas where state-run or private schools cannot go, madrasas have their own relevance. So when you have so many different ways of educating the child to bring them together, all the stakeholders to have a unified outlook to it, is something that we are suffering. We kind of cannot wrap our heads around it. Another area I'd like to point out is, if you know, somehow whenever it's the subject of education, it gets hijacked by primary schooling or the basic schooling in Pakistan, because of course the uh, the stakeholders or the number of beneficiaries is so large. There's still 2 crore kids who are of school going age who are not in school. But the higher education is even worse. I mean, our provision of higher education in Pakistan for graduate studies, for PhDs, it's worse than sub-Saharan Africa. We do not have enough colleges and universities. But then again, the point comes, okay, where do we focus on? Should we focus on teacher training, the ghost schools, the corruption, the various systems, bringing the private the government sector on the same page? So I feel even with the best of intentions, there are so many roadblocks for the government to get their policies around. That's where we get lost. But I certainly feel that it's also a creativity challenge, because we're thinking very linear. We're thinking that, oh, it has to be done the linear way. There's so many kids who are out of school who've missed basic education. How do we stitch them in? But with technology, with connectivity, with accessibility, the online version that we were just talking about, Zia, and what TCF has done, they've just not reached out through their online programs and their virtual programs to kids who are in TCF, but even the kids who are all across Pakistan, who perhaps have never seen a school, or perhaps are unable to go to a school because they go to a state school and it's not operational right now. So with creative and innovative strategies, I'm sure that we'll be able to fill the gap much quicker. That's my take on it.
Thank you, Sidra. I'm very conscious that we are, we have lots of questions. We will also try and answer some of them in our own time after, so we don't go too over. But just to take, there were a couple of questions there around how we assess needs in a community and what sort of emotional support besides just mentoring and career counseling TCF offers. So maybe we can answer that, and then I think we'll move on to Zafar and Hifsa shortly after that.
Sure. If with your permission, I'll just I'll give quick answers to 2 or 3 things that I've seen recurring in the chat box. One is about this whole question of how do we deal with special needs, and I would like to say we deal with them adequately, but the honest truth is we have a lot more to do. What I've seen on the ground is that there is a great deal of care and a great deal of recognition of the right of the child to still come to a normal school rather than be shunted into some underfunded and under-equipped special school. And in that sense, our principals and teachers go out of their way. The extent to which we have been able to embed the recognition of special needs and the handling of special needs in our teacher training leaves a lot of room for improvement. And it's something we're actively working on. We have someone actually dedicated to social emotional learning and building that part of the curriculum as we speak. So it's not just physical disabilities, but also emotional well-being. Second, the question that came up was about security issues. We are in some of the toughest areas, and there are middle of the night visits from in some areas from, and this used to happen when things were really bad, from even the Taliban who share numbers of, okay, so and so is that person your area manager, just to kind of sort of nudge us into knowing that we are operating in an area which is their area. But the fact is that what we are doing also is something which is in a long-term sense a part of the pushback to all these forces who seek to spread darkness and to kill dialogue. So we're very confident that our work prevails, and alhamdulillah it has so far. We survive by coexisting with the community, and the community owns the program deeply. So just wanted to cover quick answers to those questions, and I know there are many others that I haven't covered, but I really quickly want to go to the visit and the account of that visit as well that Dr. Iqbal and Hifsa have to share.
Absolutely. I think we will head to Zafar and Hifsa now to share their experience of their visit of a TCF school earlier this year. So to all those who are still messaging your questions, inshallah, we will try and get a response to you after the event. So Zafar and Hifsa, please do tell us more about your trip.
Hi, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I'm not really sure how I'm going to follow Zia and Sidra, to be quite honest, because it's so inspiring to hear you guys talk so passionately about something that we're both so passionate about as well. So I am, as you've said, I'm going to talk more about our actual visit. And in order for me to do that, I'm going to share my screen with the help of our wonderful technical assistant, Valid, who I think deserves a big thank you as well. So Valid, I'm going to share my slides, and I know you're going to come in and share a couple of videos. So I'm just going to share my slides with you as I'm talking through, and hopefully this will work. Let me see. So I'm assuming you can all see the slides on the screen now. Okay, so thank you. Unfortunately, I did make an executive decision this morning and decided that we were not going to have cake with our coffee, simply because Zafar and I have eaten far too much cake, and especially cheesecake during lockdown, courtesy of our daughter-in-law, Alia. So what I thought I would do is just share an image of one of the cakes that she made that was absolutely delicious, I have to add. And I'm only sorry I can't share it with you properly, but you never know. Maybe when I come to Pakistan, Sidra, I can make it for you over there next time. Most people on the call are likely to be here in the UK because our parents or grandparents made the decision to leave Pakistan at some point. There'll be some people here who left when they came here for work, to study, or even to join husbands and wives. But I do wonder whether we've ever asked ourselves, where would we be if, fate hadn't made that decision to land us 8,000 miles away from home? And I know both Sidra and Zia have touched on this, this idea that, it's all about fate and the hand that we are dealt. And that image that you see there is actually my father in the middle, and he's got his two brothers on either side on the day that we were leaving Pakistan. And you can probably see a little urchin in the window over there. And that urchin was me as a little baby just before coming to Pakistan, coming from Pakistan. And as it turned out, Zafar and his mum came in the same month and the same year. But our lives could have been very different, hence the phrase at the top, there but for the grace of God go I. And I think it's one of the reasons that we both are so passionate about supporting TCF, because we really are, incredibly grateful for the privileges that we have, and especially in this country. But we don't forget that we do come from a country where there is mass poverty. It's our motherland. And what about all those young people who don't have the same opportunities that we have? TCF aims to give every child, and especially females and male, that hand up that ladder. They give hope, as Zia mentioned, by providing them with, the most basic of our rights, which is an education. And when Zafar and I, along with our friend Wasim, who is on this call as well, visited one of the schools in February, I think it's an understatement for us to say that we were blown away. Not just from sort of the amazing buildings that we saw, the cleanliness, the tidy work environments that the young people were being provided with, but also the actual work that they were doing, the topics that were being covered as part of their curriculum. We went to see their library, and it was Zafar sort of took this picture. I think he took it specifically for you, Steve. I know you're on the call, because he said you'd be very impressed with the use of SMART goals within the education over there. And I actually had to share this with you, because these are children, whichever part of the world they come from, you know, that they are all the same deep down. And there was so much doodling on some of the desks, and this one caught my eye, and I just loved it. And I sort of put it up there for people to have a look at. And I think I wasn't sure actually whether this young man, you know, clearly fancied himself either as a poet or as a superhero. I wasn't sure what he was trying to get at. But the truth was that, you know, that they're pretty much all superheroes, not just the young people, but the teachers, you know, that we were so privileged to speak with. I mean, this was the science lab, and these items that we saw there, they were actually made by the children themselves. And the amazing thing was that they were all made from bits and pieces that the children had picked up on the rubbish dumps. And the image on the left of the screen it was a sort of a Scalextric type toy that, you know, they spent thousands of pounds in this country on children at Christmas to buy them something like this, and some child had used his initiative and put this thing together himself, having found the batteries and the wire on the tip as well. But both sort of myself, Zafar and Wasim were absolutely intrigued by the object on the right, because believe it or not, this was made by a young man, and I'm going to tell you his story shortly. It was a working vacuum cleaner. Walid, do you want to just play the video of the vacuum cleaner?
He's basically made it from rubbish that he's found.
Did he actually work the mechanism out? Did he work the mechanism himself?
So they study about it in their books.
Yeah.
And it's a part of their practical work that they have to use the.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, just a quick story about this young man who made the vacuum cleaner. And the teachers had noticed that, you know, he was very. Oh, I'll go back to the slides.
Yeah.
Am I still sharing my slides?
Not
No?
just
Right, let me go back to sharing my slides again. Hold on a second. Sorry, it's just gone a little bit. It's gone a bit slow for some reason. Ah, there we go. Slideshow. I think it's that one there. Okay, so just a story about the young man who made this vacuum cleaner. The teachers were telling us that they'd noticed that, you know, he seemed to be quite a smart little boy, but he wasn't completing his homework. I think he was about 11 or 12 at the time. And they were saying that he appeared quite lethargic when he was at school. And when they spoke to him about it, they discovered that this child, because he was a child, was attending school every day. Straight after school, he'd go to work, where he'd have something to eat very quickly. And then he was basically, you know, flipping burgers and making meals for other people till about 11 o'clock at night. He'd then go home, where he'd have to complete the chores at home that needed to be done before he went to bed. Now, when was this young man supposed to do his homework? And this was just one of the examples that we heard about. Every single child in the school that we saw had some sort of hardship, you know, some adversity that they were having to live with and deal with, whether that was, you know, abusive parents, you know, drug abuse in the family, you know, abject poverty. But for all of them, you know, education is their way out, because it provides them with what Zia said right at the beginning of the presentation. They provide them with hope. We were really lucky. Oops, sorry, let me just move that slide on. I don't want to see that one again. I have to go to the end and then move on. Okay. We were very lucky to visit the school, and the great thing was we even got time to spend talking to the children and the teachers, and we did visit a couple of the classrooms as well, so that we could see things in action. And we had some fun along the way. Walid, maybe you want to just play the next video just briefly, because it's good 30 seconds, just maybe just to give an idea of the noise in the classroom. I think the thing that surprised Zafar and Wasim the most during this particular visit was the fact that I actually knew this nursery rhyme. So I had great fun singing along with the children. And honestly, it was such an experience. It was such a privilege to meet these young people and their teachers. I'm trying to share my screen again. It doesn't want to share. I am trying to share the screen again, guys. I believe it doesn't seem to want to let me share the screen. Okay, well look, hopefully we can share a couple more of the pictures.
Why do you ask me to share the video?
There we go, yeah, so we'll just I'll just move on to the next couple of pictures. And Zafar, I don't know if you want to say something about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the socioeconomic profile of the families and the children, where they came from, and it was interesting that most of the children came from families where they were relatively poor. The people had jobs, but their income was quite poor. So they were either carers, or they were servants, or they were cleaners, or they had low income trading on the street or something like that. So that was generally the economic profile of the population that I saw.
And I think the other thing to mention here is that, you know, every child pays something towards their education. It's not something that is free, but it does depend very much on their personal circumstances. And I think we all know that, you know, anything that comes free does tend to be taken for granted. And it's also it's that commitment from their own families as well. However small amount they can afford to pay, they all do pay something towards the education. I think one of the things that neither of us could miss, despite sort of seeing these amazing buildings and, you know, beautiful settings that the young people were learning in, was the outside environment. For some reason, I believe the screen's frozen. I don't know if you can just move the slide forward. Maybe if you can go forward one more. The slide's gone a little bit funny.
Yeah, do you want to do, yeah. I mean, when we so it was a beautiful building, but outside this was the catchment area for this particular school, and you can see you can't really see there, but there's a open sewer there, which is running right next to the school. And as a public health doctor, you know, horrified to see what the potential hazards there could be, you know, with this open sewage running through there.
And yet this was the environment that these young people were living in, you know, which was it's all quite heartbreaking, again, for the same reason that, you know, we mentioned earlier, you know, there but for the grace of God go I. There is another picture that I had on the presentation that I was trying to share, that I did want to show you. It was taken from the top of one of the classrooms, and when you look across that sewage, the picture is there now. If you look at the picture, if you see the sort of in the middle there, you can see a number of crosses and a crucifix, and you're actually looking across into what is a Christian cemetery. And I know somebody put one of the questions on the chat asking about, you know, religion. TCF schools are non-religious schools and accept children from all faiths and from none. And this particular school, the majority of the young people that were attending came from Christian backgrounds. And again, I think that was, for me, that was just fantastic that you had, you know, young people from different faiths who are all being taught at the same level, regardless of what their backgrounds were. And, you know, everything that we saw, the buildings, the work, the dedication that the teachers have towards these young people. You know, many of the teachers that we saw told us that they had been to TCF schools themselves, you know, and they wanted to come and put things back into the community. I honestly, both of us are just so in awe of the work that we have seen, the work that TCF do, the commitment that they show to education in Pakistan. And for me, and for both of us, actually, the ultimate question is, you know, what can we do to support TCF even further? So that's it for me. I don't know if you want to add anything, Zafar?
No, that's fine. I mean, I think it'd be great to maybe move on the discussion onto maybe how within the UK, Zainab, maybe we could set up different chapters in different parts of the UK. Because I think we've got, I think looking at the invitation list and looking at the participants, we've got people from all over the country. And certainly me, there's a number of us within Staffordshire quite happy to open up a Staffordshire chapter. So would be happy to do that. So Asghar, Gul, and Anwar, we'd be happy to set up something within Staffordshire. I'm just wondering whether there may be people from Birmingham or Leeds or London, other parts of London, where people may want to join existing chapters or may want to set up their own some initiatives.
Absolutely. Waleed, if we can just on a couple of slides, I apologize to everyone for us running a little over time, but if you just give me a couple of minutes. Some of you were asking how you can get involved and how you can support. So for those of you who'd like to donate, you can do so as an individual, as a family, as a community. We have chapters, as Zafar was just mentioning, that actually take on an initiative. They might decide to support a school or a classroom of themselves. So you can come on board as a donor, but equally, if you have your time and skills and you'd like to dedicate them to our cause, you can also sort of create a fundraising chapter of your own. And the next slide, I just wanted to quickly take you through some donation options. So it's really affordable to sponsor a child's education. That's just £9 a month. It's something that we can all afford to do. You can easily set up a direct debit on the TCF-UK webpage, and after the event, we'll probably share a link with you on how you can do that as well. Choosing to support a child's education, it's a life-changing opportunity for them, and it offers them social and economic mobility. You can also support a classroom of 30 children for just over £2,500. Some people choose to pay this as monthly direct debits for £212. And like I mentioned, you can also come on board as a family or a community, so you don't have to take that on as yourself. We can also place a plaque outside classrooms in the name of a loved one or your name to recognize you for your support. And finally, those who want to leave sort of a very lasting legacy, they adopt a school. We have a number of donors in the High Wycombe area. There's about 38, 40 people, friends who've come together, and they're paying anything from between £5 a month to £100 a month. And collectively, they're supporting a secondary school, and they're looking at how they can get involved in sort of coming and delivering talks to the students at the school. So it's really an opportunity to engage and make a life-changing difference in the lives of some of the most underprivileged children. So as Zafar was mentioning on the next slide, there are details about how you can get involved. So we have fundraising chapters across the UK. If we just quickly go to the next slide, I've got a list of chapters, existing chapters that we have in Yorkshire. We have a young professionals chapter that's being set up by a young lady based in Leeds. And we have chapters in Cardiff, in High Wycombe, and North and South London. So if you'd like to join any of our existing chapters, you can type it in the chat box. And we can try and sort of take that conversation further, or certainly you can create your own. We'd love to have more of a presence in cities like Birmingham and Manchester and Stafford. So you're very welcome to start your own chapter, and TCF-UK can provide lots of marketing support and other support that you might need to get started. If we can just flip back to the last slide, Waleed. There's also a couple other things you can do. So some people like to set up a fundraising challenge for themselves. We have a peer-to-peer fundraising platform called Classy, through which people can set up, they might choose to dedicate their birthday to support children in Pakistan and get their friends and family to support, or they might take on a challenge like a marathon and get sponsorship. And through Classy, it's a wonderful way to keep track of your own fundraising targets that you can see in the image below. You can also sign up to our UK newsletters on our website, so you can find out about events that we run and campaigns that we run. So we sometimes have matching campaigns that we run through which your donations can be doubled. So I think there is one that we will be holding at the end of the year. And if you'd like more information on how you can support that initiative, please do sign up for our newsletters as well. Finally, I want to just give it back to Hifsa quickly. I know Hifsa's got a nice creative endeavor she's working on with a new cookery book. So Hifsa, can you tell us how can we get our hands on that, and how is that going for you?
Yes, of course. And as you say, there's so many different ways that we can support TCF. Whether we want to sponsor a child or we want to do something ourselves. So there's a number of charities that I support. TCF is one of the bigger ones. So during lockdown, one of the things that I noticed was that people were doing a lot more cooking. We had no choice. We didn't have takeaways. We didn't have restaurants to go to. So I've actually compiled a cookery book. I've got probably about 60 or 70, maybe more recipes in there at the minute. It's in the process of being proofread and just designed, and a large chunk of the monies raised from the sale of that will all be going to TCF. There's so many different ways. 18 months ago, I did a parachute jump for another charity I support. And if I get enough encouragement, maybe my husband will let me do another parachute jump, because I've been dying to get back onto the aeroplane and jump out again. So maybe Zia, Sidra, Zainab, you can convince Zafar to let me do another one, and I will more than happily do it for TCF. But yes, I will, as soon as the book is out, I will make sure everybody knows. You can all buy copies, for Christmas, Eid, whatever festivities you want. And yep, it's over to you and convincing my husband to let me do a parachute jump for you guys.
Yeah, just ignore the crazy lady. But I really hope that we've got 40 or so people on as kind of as participants, and I'd be really good if each individual could consider how they could help, whether it's through whether it's through joining a local group, or whether it's fundraising or whatever. I just hope that you log on the TCF website and maybe receive their newsletters, etc. Just do something. I think there are questions about the US, and I'm sure the US, there are lots of chapters within the US, and I think quite a bit of the funding for TCF comes from the United States. I think, Zainab, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. If anyone wants more information on, if they have family, friends who are based in the US and they'd like to get involved there, we can certainly share information. The US has many different chapters across states, so we can share information on that.
Zainab, can I just say something very quickly about this? Dr. Iqbal and Hifsa, both of you, thank you so much for putting all of us together in this conversation. I just want to share with you and with everyone else who's listening. This is one of the things which invigorates me about TCF as well, not just on one side, the impact that we create with the children, but the role that we find within human beings everywhere in the world. And I say human beings, not just Pakistanis, because we have so many supporters who are not Pakistanis, who literally connect with these children at a human level. Globally, to raise the funds we do, we raise about $30 million a year. To raise the funds we do, we employ less than 15 people to ask for money. And asking for money is a tough thing, right? We all know that it's one of those things which, scratches at your ego, and it just, you don't want to be in that situation. I was one of those people as well. But thousands of people volunteer anywhere from an hour to, entire, their entire waking hours to this pursuit of, this connection of with between them and their families and their children, with the lives of those families and those children. And that is how we've come this far. There is nothing else. There's no other secret sauce but the commitment and volunteering sort of spirit of people who went out of their comfort zone and out of their routine to do this for those children. So kudos to you, and thank you, all of you, for considering this. Please don't just think of making a transaction, think of becoming part of this family. I am so super blessed to be part of it. I don't think of myself as a staff member alone. I think Zaina would agree. I think when we come together once every few years, it's literally like a family coming together. So please join us. It's a movement, and it has a transformative impact for decades to come.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful note to end on. Thank you again, Hifsa and Zafar, for putting this together, inviting your friends and family.
Yeah.
It's incredible of you to do that. And I'd also like to extend a very heartfelt thank you to Sidra for taking time out of her busy schedule to join us and talk about, what's inspired her to join us as a Goodwill ambassador. Thank you, Zia, for joining us on a Saturday morning as well. And of course, to all of you for also spending this morning with us. I hope it's given you food for thought on, all the good work that's not only happening in Pakistan, but how you can be a part of that, and like Zia said, please do join our movement. It's not just as a donor, but it's also as someone who really wants to see change happen in Pakistan. So with that, I'll just say thank you. We will try and get back to more questions and provide information on how you can support in an email following to everyone. So thank you again, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
And one sort of final thank you from me to you, Zainab, as well, and for helping to put this together, and absolutely inspirational to listen to Sidra and Zia. Thank you, Waleed. Thank you, Sania. And we won't let you off the hook. We'll be organising further events. So so I'm afraid you'll have to give more of your time in the future. But hopefully we can grow this family together and actually win people's hearts and minds to be able to contribute towards this fantastic vision that you have.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
No.
Love it.